International News Now.
In the second story for today, we want to talk about the controversy associated with the release of the Nunes Memo last Friday. Devin Nunes, and just so you know, Caroline and I had a conversation about this. We've heard both Nunes and Nunes, and the pronunciation of there. So if anybody knows this, feel free to send us a quick click in. Anyway, Devin Nunes is the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. He's a Republican from California and has played an active role in challenging the roles of the FBI, the Justice Department, and the special counsel Robert Mueller in investigating whether any members of the Trump campaign, its transition team, or its administration colluded with Russia to secure Trump's electoral victory. As we all know, there's a wide consensus across the various intelligence agencies of the United States that elements of the Russian government interfered in the November 2016 elections. It appears that they coordinated hacks of the Democratic National Committee with WikiLeaks, and then released a series of damaging emails about Hillary Clinton and her advisors. The Russian government also actively played a disinformation game, creating fake stories on Facebook and Twitter that were designed to aggravate pre-existing political conflicts in the United States over such issues as race, religion, and immigration. More broadly, the Russian government and elements of the Russian government sought to undermine the legitimacy of the electoral process in the United States. And in doing so, they hoped to delegitimize the Clinton presidency. Just to be clear here, the Russians, like most observers, including those within the Trump team, expected Clinton to win. Now, the Obama administration began to release statements in December of 2016 indicating that Russia had interfered in the American elections. It imposed new sanctions on Russia on December 29th of 2016. Then on January 10th, 2017, BuzzFeed published the Steele dossier. This was research conducted by a former British spy, Christopher Steele, that had been commissioned by the private American firm Fusion GPS. Now, this memo alleged significant contacts between officials of the Russian government and officials in the Trump campaign. It suggested that these contacts were designed to leverage compromising information about President Trump and his team that could be then used to secure concessions on American sanctions against Russia if Trump won the election. Intelligence about these contacts also supported claims that Trump campaign officials had colluded with the Russian government to secure compromising intelligence about Senator Clinton. Now, there are a couple of important details about this memo. First, while the original research and sponsorship of research done by Christopher Steele had been commissioned by Republicans during the primary season in 2015 and 2016, this opposition research against President Trump was later funded by Democratic interests, campaign interests. Second, the research in this memo has played some role in the wider investigation of possible collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian government during the 2016 presidential campaign. Now, the Nunes Memo argues that the Steele report was central to FISA, or the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, a FISA application initiated by the FBI to conduct wiretap surveillance of Carter Page, a Trump campaign advisor, in October of 2016. More broadly, this memo argues that the use of this political opposition research was funded by the Democrats and then later used to spy on a Trump campaign official, demonstrates political bias in favor of the Democrats at the FBI. It's thus trying to raise much larger questions about the investigation that could endanger the Trump presidency. Now, we're going to listen to an NPR audio clip from last Friday that provides some more background on this memo and its implications. Then we're going to come back and talk about this story a little bit more. As you listen, feel free to send in some discussion questions, and we'll try to take some time to answer them after the clip.
After days of buildup, the memo is out. Of course, we're talking about the Republican document alleging that the FBI and the Justice Department abused surveillance powers to target the Trump campaign early on in the Russia investigation. NPR Justice reporter Ryan Lucas has been following this story for a very long time and is here with us now. Hi, Ryan.
Howdy.
We've seen the memo. What does it say?
Well, the allegations revolve around a surveillance warrant that was obtained by the FBI on Trump foreign policy advisor Carter Page. As the memo tells it, the FBI and the Justice Department relied on information in the infamous Trump-Russia dossier that was put together by a former British spy and paid for by Democrats. They used this dossier to get approval to conduct that surveillance. The memo says the FBI didn't disclose that to the FISA court. That's the court that approves those surveillance orders. Didn't disclose that the Democrats were paying for the dossier. The FBI also allegedly left out that the dossier's author disliked Trump and was leaking information to the media that was then used to support the surveillance application before the court.
A lot of this sounds familiar from arguments that Republicans have been making for a long time. Is there anything in the memo that's surprising?
What's perhaps the most surprising is that the memo, and this is perhaps inadvertently, bolsters the case for the Russia investigation. Here's how. It says the FBI and Justice Department obtained the surveillance warrant from the FISA court. These warrants run 90 days. In the case of Carter Page, they were renewed 3 times. Now, why is that important? It's important because in order to get the court to renew the surveillance, you have to prove to the court that you're getting intelligence from it, that it's producing. So in the case of Page, the indication is that the surveillance was indeed paying off. The other surprising thing in the memo is that it says the FBI's Russia investigation began in late July of 2016 because of information related to George Papadopoulos.
Not Carter Page.
Not Carter Page, Papadopoulos. Now, Papadopoulos, of course, was a campaign advisor like Page. Papadopoulos has pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI about his own contacts with Russians. Now, if the investigation was launched because of Papadopoulos, that means the allegation from Republicans that the dossier is the root of the investigation, that can't be true.
Part of what made this so unusual was that the FBI and the Justice Department strongly fought the release of this memo while the White House pushed for it to come out.
Right.
What have we heard from the FBI and the Justice Department today?
Well, Attorney General Jeff Sessions put out a statement that tried to walk a very fine line. He says he has great confidence in the men and women of the department, but no department is perfect. He says he looks forward to working with Congress and will work hard to ascertain the truth of the matter. Now, the FBI put out a statement earlier this week, the one in which it said it has grave concerns about material omissions of fact that fundamentally impact the memo's accuracy. Now that the memo is out, the FBI is kind of stuck. To correct what it sees as inaccuracies would likely involve disclosing classified information. That's not something that it's going to do. The FBI Agents Association, however, put out a statement today defending the work that the Bureau does. It says the American people should know that FBI agents won't let partisan politics distract them from their mission.
I want to take a step back here for a minute because since this investigation began, the president has fired the former FBI director, James Comey. The Bureau's number 2 official, Andrew McCabe, recently stepped aside. And today, the president said in light of the memo that there are a lot of people who should be ashamed and much worse. Could people lose their jobs over this?
One individual who is under pressure is Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. He's an individual who signed one of these surveillance orders before the court.
And he oversees the Russia investigation conducted by Robert Mueller.
Exactly. And Trump has been talking with people about getting rid of Rosenstein. The president was asked today whether he would fire Rosenstein in light of the memo. His response was, "You figure that one out." The concern here, of course, is that the memo may be used as a justification to push Rosenstein out. And because he's the one who oversees the Russia investigation, that's a big concern.
It's NPR's Ryan Lucas. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
So first, the first point that I want to emphasize here is we need to think about the release of this memo in terms of congressional oversight over the executive branch departments to ensure that they're doing their jobs. This is consistent with the constitutional provisions laid out that the president appoints executive branch officials and then Congress checks on them. The charge here is that the FBI was manipulating the warrant process to spy on Trump campaign officials. Now, the challenges of this that raise questions about whether Congress is acting according to its institutional responsibilities here, or it's acting because of partisan interests, has been generated and stems from the fact that Democrats on the House Intelligence Committee resisted and voted against releasing the memo. And so this raises a larger question, right? Are the congressional officials, is this about Congress checking the executive branch, which is absolutely vital to the functioning of our system, or is instead this just about partisan politics? And one of the ways that we often check that is, do you get some bipartisanship going on here? Now, the Democrats have written, Adam Schiff, you saw a picture of him, who's the minority leader of the House Intelligence Committee, have written a response to the Nunes memo. The House Intelligence Committee voted yesterday to release that. That is on the president's desk, and as of we came into class at 12:15, he's got 5 days to decide that. That would, a release of that would be evidence, right, of greater bipartisan. So Republicans in Congress have already signed off on the release of that. That would help create some more evidence that this is congressional oversight. The larger challenge here is that it's clear the manner the memo was released initially inserted partisan politics into the investigation, which raises questions about its political objectivity. What are some of the broader implications here? First, the audio clip talked about the threat that this memo poses to Rod Rosenstein at Justice. He's the Deputy Director of the Justice Department. He signed off. Why does it threaten him? He signed off on these FISA applications. So if they didn't behave appropriately, this could indicate that there's political bias in play. Why is this important? Because he oversees Robert Mueller, the special counsel in charge of the investigation into Russia collusion. If Rosenstein gets fired, the risk, and Democrats worry, that then President Trump will hire someone or appoint someone as the deputy director who then can fire Mueller. A couple of important developments and implications since then. The clip talked about how the Nunes memo confirms that the original investigation started not because of the Steele dossier, but because George Papadopoulos, his actions back in June of 2016, he was bragging to an Australian ambassador about that the campaign had access to Russian intelligence on Clinton. The other thing to realize here is that Nunes charged that the FISA application didn't tell the judge that the Steele memo was funded by Democratic interests. This suggests, right, that the officials in charge of the application were hiding its partisan goals. He has now admitted in an interview that this information, that actually Democratic interests funded the Steele dossier, was included in a footnote on the original FISA application. Again, Democrats are going to respond, and we're waiting to see whether this is going to be released, whether the Trump administration is going to sign off on this. Finally, I want to conclude this conversation by pointing out a larger theoretical issue that we've been talking about since the first day of class. This story illustrates how the U.S. exists in a larger international system. The domestic political instability and looming crisis that could emerge if Mueller is fired, or if Trump is charged with obstruction of justice or impeached, is exactly what the Russians sought to accomplish. They have raised questions about the legitimacy of our electoral process. No matter what side you're on, they have raised questions about our electoral process, and they are effectively stoking conflict between supporters of President Trump and opponents of President Trump. So they're sowing domestic political conflict, which was the point to undermine the ability of the United States to act with consensus on important foreign policy questions. Now, let's leave the question of whether Russia colluded with the Trump campaign to the side. It doesn't matter for this larger theoretical point. The larger issue is that we can't think about domestic politics in the United States as sealed off from this larger set of international pressures. In this case, the specter of foreign interference is shaping domestic political outcomes in the United States. It's stoking partisan conflict, it's raising questions about the independence of our judicial institutions, and it potentially threatens the Trump presidency.